Okay. Welcome back to Thoughts Matter. I'm James Barrow. Joining me today is Martin McCorkle. We've been going through a series on swimming with the sharks and how to deal with aggressive arguers. So far we've covered two techniques, defensive techniques, when you're engaged in an argument. So the first one was how to deal with ad hominem attacks, and the second one was what to do when a professor tries to make you the teacher. So now we're going to talk about a third one, another defensive technique. So Martin, go ahead and start us off here.
Yes. So let's imagine, going back from the last video that, you say to your professor, you're the teacher, I just want to be the student. The teacher says, well, you have such great opinions. You were sharing with us yesterday. You have a mouth. You seem to enjoy talking. Why don't you tell us what you think? You can do that, right? See, at some point, you have to not answer. You have to be silent. And you have to learn to be okay with that.
So silence.
Yeah, where you just stop and look at him. And don't say a word. This is very Christ-like.
Okay, explain that.
Now, can I stop a minute and do a big picture about Jesus thing? Because Jesus is amazing. Okay, now, what was the one thing that the gospel writers told us about Christ as a child? What was the one event that we have?
Him going to the temple and talking with the Pharisees? Or?
An A for James. So, it must have been pretty strange to have God incarnate in your family. But yet the gospel writers, of all the things that they could have put in there, they put in a narrative about how Jesus was brilliant verbally. It's like in I think he was 13, I forget, but he's in 8th grade. And it's like an 8th grader went to seminary and just blew away the professors.
Right.
And he did that for days. I think he said 3 days or something.
No, I don't exactly think you're right.
But Jesus is a masterful wordsmith. Now couple that with, it's unfortunate that we read the Bible. Well, not unfortunate, it is what it is. We read the Bible at church and, we read it very solemnly and, in King James Version, verily, verily, I say unto you. And what we often miss is that most of the narratives in the Gospels are wildly out of control. They may start inside, but they usually wind up outside, where there are people trying to stone him or throw him off cliffs. When he's inside, sometimes people are breaking through roof to get to him. Yeah. He's got demoniacs writhing at his feet. He has the guy with chains, freaking out. There's pigs going off cliffs. It is wild.
Yeah.
And the verbal attacking is off the charts high end.
Yeah.
Because what these Pharisees and Sadducees are doing is they're ticked off that Jesus is winning disciples. And so they're trying to take him down. And they can't do it because he's so brilliant. Jesus is the best verbal street fighter in history. Most of the time, you don't win verbal street fights. Jesus wins them constantly.
Every time.
One of my favorite chapters in the Bible is, Jesus does the triumphal entry. He comes into Jerusalem. And then there's usually one chapter where Jesus just spars with people. What about, marriage at the resurrection? What about this? What about this? What about this? And Jesus just nailing him and shutting him up.
Yeah.
He is the master. And I tell you that the most of what I've learned comes from sitting at his feet. Because there is nobody better doing this than Jesus. And Jesus used silence in the end. You see, now what most of us do is we practice silence at the beginning of an argument. No. Jesus did not resort to silence until after 3 years of public ministry. He taught publicly in the synagogues during the Passion Week. He came to Pilate. He asked us to answer his questions. And only then did he say, like a sheep, I will be quiet. So I believe most Christians could be more aggressive in the beginning, defending truth, and then come to silence at the end. Not at the beginning, at the end. So when the professor comes back to you that second time, Martin, I want you to tell me, no, you're the teacher. Come on now. You opened your mouth once, I want to hear you. Then you have to be comfortable just looking at the professor and not changing what you said. Because if you speak again, you're going to change what you said. And that's what he wants. Silence says, I'm not changing my mind.
I'm confident in what I said the first time now.
I'm done.
What's the point in me repeating
exactly
what I've already explained? Interesting.
You're just saying, you're the teacher, I'm the student.
So what do you mean by a lot of people will use silence at first and be aggressive later? How does that look in real life? I'm trying to think of an example of that.
Most Christians, when they're in a situation that begins to start to get hot, like nearly everything in the Gospels, they retreat. That's what we've been taught. I have been taught that my whole Christian life, is that when things get hot or uncomfortable, you just back up. Don't get angry. Don't say anything you're going to regret. Just shh. Just restrain. And see, I'm not that way. I've learned that didn't work for me. What I learned is that Jesus used silence after he spoke. So you speak the truth, and then you can let it go. But the truth needs to be spoken before you have the option of silence. And I think Christ's example says that. Because he was not silenced. He was the greatest verbal street fighter in the history of man. And he used his tongue at a skill level that no one can touch.
And you are saying that from a stance that is, to some degree, secular. I mean, that's not something that's said in the Bible. We don't have it written that Christ was the best. You're saying that by analyzing the way he talks, that's what you believe from a purely just analytical perspective. And what that means is that anyone can learn from the way Christ argued. And I think that's really important to say, because there's a lot of people that might watch the show that are not Christians, and there's a lot to learn from the person of Christ, and how he responded to things, and the pure fact that he's had such an impact on the world is enough to some degree to take him seriously, I think. But specifically, what we have written about the way he communicated and the way he lived his life is worth looking into, regardless of what your religious beliefs are.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's brilliant. He's flat out brilliant. And familiarity breeds contempt.
I was about to say the same thing.
We're so used to it that, another one is just more that I just love. Is, so we pay taxes to Caesar. They're going to get him on taxes, get him on politics. Give me a coin. Who's on this? Caesar. Give to Caesar what is Caesar. Give to God what is God's. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Flat out. Just everybody gets put in their place. The guy trying to get him into a trap just got nailed. God got affirmed because everything is in his image. Right? So it was just it's masterful. And it's all through the Gospels. It's that Jesus is brilliant is one of my favorite things to share with people. Is to really appreciate.
I think it's something that I would like to appreciate more. I think that there's like I said, familiarity breeds contempt, and I think that there's definitely that's the case with the person of Christ. I think that because the whole Christian worldview is centered around Christ, there is this tendency to assume that we know who Christ was, and assume that we understand the person of Christ and the attitude of Christ and the actions of Christ, because we've heard the stories about him so much. But then I read the passages, and the things that he says is just wild. I mean, it's crazy. Even just the way he communicated with his disciples.
Yes.
Can I stop and go bury my dead father first? No, follow me. You know, it's radical stuff that you wouldn't put in there if you were trying to create the perfect. I don't know, if I was trying to create the perfect Savior, it's not necessarily how I would do it. So it is, it's different and worth looking at.
Yes, the world wants to give us a Jesus who is calm, and who agrees, and who listens, and who is kind to everyone. And he's a nice guy with a beard. And, that's what they want. And what the Gospels present to us is a man filled with incredible zeal.
Yeah.
Which is a very different thing. Yeah. And it's unassailably his argumentation is just right. We'll talk more about it later.
Okay. So any final thoughts here? So this technique is, put simply, be comfortable with silence.
Absolutely. Again, with the caveat that you want your silence to follow your truth speaking.
Gotcha.
Not before. Most Christians are taught to be silent first. I want to teach people to be silent second.
And along those lines, I think that's why it's really important to pick your battles wisely and to
Yes.
only have a few issues, because it's very... Silence is needed at first if you don't know what you're talking about.
Exactly.
So you need to know what you're talking about a few things. We only have the capacity for a few things. And so know what you believe to be true about those things. Speak that truth. And then be okay being silent once you've said your piece.
Love it.